My mom left me here and said she'd be back. It's been 3 days, the trembling girl whispered to the stoic Apache warrior as dust swirled around the abandoned saloon steps. The townsfolk hurried past with averted eyes, muttering about another burden and what did she expect. Their cruel dismissal sealed her assumed fate, the orphanage, or worse. But when the weathered scout paused instead of walking away, two outcasts found themselves bound by shared displacement. The child possessed something dangerous, perfect memory of every whispered conversation, every midnight meeting, every dirty secret this corrupt frontier town desperately wanted buried. The warrior carried the authority to expose what others feared most, the truth about missing families and stolen land. Can an abandoned girl and a displaced Apache unite to uncover the conspiracy that threatens them both? Or will the town's hidden powers silence their voices forever? Before we continue, comment where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will publish a story there. The Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on 8-year-old Addie Gardner as she sat on the weathered steps of Whiskey Malloy's saloon. Her small fingers clutched her mother's worn blue shawl. 3 days had passed since Sarah Gardner vanished after promising to return by nightfall. Addie approached every passerby with the same desperate question. Where was her mama? The blacksmith shook his head and kept walking. The banker's wife pulled her children closer and hurried past. Mrs. Henderson from the general store clicked her tongue in disapproval. Another mouth to feed that nobody wants, whispered the preacher's wife, loud enough for Addie to hear. Probably ran off, like they all do eventually, muttered old Tom from his rocking chair. Addie's stomach growled. She had finished the last of the bread her mother left 2 days ago. The townspeople of Clearwater Springs treated her like a stray dog they hoped would wander a frame. Little girl's been asking too many questions, Malloy said to Morrison. His voice carried the weight of authority, despite holding no official position. Disturbing my customers. Addie looked up at the saloon owner. His expensive suit and gold watch chain marked him as the wealthiest man in Clearwater Springs. Everything about him suggested power and control. My mama worked for lots of people. She was a seamstress. Someone must remember her. Malloy's cold smile never reached his eyes. Seamstresses come and go. Nothing special about any of them. But Addie remembered differently. She recalled every detail with perfect clarity. Her mother had argued with Malloy just 4 nights ago outside the saloon. Sarah's voice had been firm and unafraid. Those families had legal claims to their land. The documentation proves it. Malloy had responded with barely controlled anger. You're meddling in affairs beyond your understanding, woman. Addie had watched from the shadows as her mother stood her ground. Justice isn't beyond anyone's understanding. Now Malloy studied Addie with calculating eyes. Children shouldn't repeat grown-up conversations they don't understand. The threat hung in the air like desert heat. Addie nodded quickly and hurried away, but her mind cataloged every word, every expression, every detail as it always did. Near the town well, she approached Tatanka, one of Malloy's cowboys. The young man possessed kind eyes that seemed different from his employer's hardness. He was mending a bridle when Addie sat beside him. Mister, have you seen my mama, Sarah Gardner? Tatanka's hand stilled on the leather. He glanced around nervously before leaning closer. Your mama asked me questions about my boss's business, about families who used to live on land that Malloy now owns. What did you tell her? The truth. That those families left sudden-like after meeting with him, always at night, always scared. Miss Clara barely tolerated each other. Naichi dismounted near the water trough. The townspeople gave him a wide berth, their discomfort obvious. He represented everything they feared about the changing frontier. Addie had exhausted every other option. The adults either couldn't help or wouldn't help. This stranger might be her last chance. She approached the Apache scout with determined steps. Her heart pounded, but desperation outweighed fear. When he looked at her with questioning eyes, she spoke the words that would change everything. "My mom left me here and said she'd be back. It's been 3 days." Naichi studied the small girl with weathered eyes that had seen too much loss. Children approached him rarely. Most cowered behind their parents when he passed through frontier towns. This one stood her ground despite trembling hands. "Your mother," he said in careful English. "What did she look like?" "Tall, like you. Brown skin like me. She wore a blue dress with tiny flowers." The description meant nothing to him, but something in the child's steady gaze demanded attention. She possessed an unusual stillness for someone so young and frightened. "Go find your people," Naichi said, turning toward the water trough. "You are my people now." The words stopped him cold. He faced her again, seeing determination replace desperation in her dark eyes. "I have no people here, child." "Neither do I." Sheriff Morrison approached with heavy footsteps and a scowl. His hand rested on his gun belt in a gesture meant to intimidate. "Apache, you need to move along. No loitering in town. I water my horse." Nothing more. "Well, hurry it up. And don't go filling that child's head with nonsense." Morrison's urgency seemed excessive for a simple supply stop. Naichi had delivered military dispatches to dozens of frontier towns. Most sheriffs barely acknowledged his presence beyond basic courtesy. After Morrison retreated, Addie stepped closer. "He wants you gone," gave Senor Martinez papers to sign. Senora Martinez was crying. Perhaps they owed him money. Then why did Mr. Malloy take their land deed afterward? I saw him put it in his coat pocket. Naichi's attention sharpened. Land disputes had plagued every territory he had traveled through. But this child's account suggested something more systematic. "The Henderson family left 2 weeks before that," Addie continued. "Same thing. Midnight departure after meeting with Mr. Malloy. He kept their property papers, too." "How do you remember such details?" "I remember everything. Mama said it was a gift." To test her claim, Naichi asked about his own arrival. Addie recounted his exact route into town, the time he had arrived, and the words he had spoken to the stable boy. Every detail proved accurate. "Your mother taught you well." "She taught me languages, too. She said understanding people's words gives you power." Addie attempted a phrase in Apache. Her pronunciation was terrible, but her effort was genuine. The attempt to communicate in his language touched something in Naichi's guarded heart. "What did your mother tell you before she left?" "She said she had to meet someone about papers that proved the truth." "She said truth always wins in the end, but sometimes it needs help." Whiskey Malloy emerged from his saloon and walked toward them with purposeful strides. His expensive boots kicked up dust with each heavy step. Several of his men followed at a distance. "Apache, your business here is finished." "I decide when my business is finished." Malloy's face reddened with anger. "This child has been spreading lies about decent folk. Don't let her poison your mind with nonsense." Naichi looked down at Addie, who met his gaze with unflinching courage. In her eyes he saw the same fierce determination his grandmother had possessed when facing impossible odds. "The child seems honest to me." Children imagine things. They don't understand adult matters. But Addie's memory had already mother case. She was a witness to systematic fraud that affected countless families. His own people had lost land to similar schemes across the territory. "I will help you find your mother." Addie's face lit up with hope for the first time in 3 days. You believe me? I believe truth has power. Your mother was wise to teach you that. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, Nietzsche and Addie formed an unlikely alliance. Neither could have imagined how their partnership would reshape the entire town of Clearwater Springs. Nietzsche and Addie began their investigation at dawn. The child's perfect memory served as their map through 3 days of accumulated secrets. She led him to specific locations where she had witnessed suspicious activities. Behind the blacksmith shop, Addie pointed to scuff marks in the dirt. Mr. Malloy met with 3 men here 2 nights ago. They talked about moving someone to the old mine. Nietzsche knelt and examined the tracks. 4 sets of boots. One dragged slightly as if someone had been forced to walk. The trail led toward the abandoned silver mine outside town. Did you hear what they said about this person? They said she knew too much and needed to stay quiet until they figured out what to do. The pronoun sent ice through Nietzsche's veins. A woman held captive, likely Addie's mother. They moved to the old church where Sarah had allegedly found hidden documents. The building stood empty except for broken pews and dust-covered surfaces. Addie's memory guided them to a loose floorboard behind the altar. Underneath lay a collection of papers wrapped in oiled cloth. Property deeds, survey maps, and legal documents filled the makeshift hiding place. Each page told the same story of fraudulent land transfers. Your mother was building a case, Nietzsche said, studying the evidence. Against Mr. Malloy? Against an entire network of theft. Tatanka appeared in the church doorway, his face etched with worry. The young cowboy entered the church carrying a bundle of school records. Her usual timid demeanor had been replaced by quiet determination. I've been tracking enrollment patterns, she announced. 12 families have left town in the past 6 months, all after their children stopped attending school suddenly. She spread the records across a broken pew. Names and dates created a clear timeline of systematic displacement. These families didn't just move, Miss Clara continued. They fled in the middle of the night. Children left toys and books behind. Nietzsche connected the pattern to his own experiences. His people had been similarly displaced through legal manipulation and intimidation. The methods were always the same. Only the victims changed. Malloy targets families with valuable land but weak legal protection, he observed. Freed slaves, immigrants, anyone without political connections, Miss Clara agreed. Addie's memory provided crucial details about each family's final days in town. Arguments with Malloy, midnight visits from his men, fear in the parents' eyes when they thought their children weren't watching. The oldest families in town never have problems, she noted. Only the newer ones who built good lives on good land. Tatanka's journal revealed Malloy's methods: forged gambling debts, false accusations of cattle rustling, claims of unpaid taxes that couldn't be verified. Always enough legal pretext to force quick departures. He's been stealing land for years, Tatanka said. I just never understood the full scope until now. Their investigation was interrupted by heavy footsteps outside the church. Sheriff Morrison's voice carried through the broken windows as he spoke with one of Malloy's men. Find that Apache and the child. Malloy wants them both run out of town before sunset. The group hid behind the altar until the voices faded. Morrison's urgency confirmed they were getting close to dangerous truths. We need to find Addie's mother, Nietzsche whispered. But we also need to expose this entire operation. Miss Clara's face showed new resolve. The monthly memory provided one final crucial detail. She had overheard Malloy telling his men that the woman in the mine needed to stay alive because her signature was required for certain documents. He's keeping her alive because he needs something from her, she explained. The revelation changed everything. Sarah Gardner wasn't just a witness to be silenced. She was an active participant in Malloy's scheme, unwillingly, but necessarily alive. Then we have time, Nietzsche said, but not much. Their unlikely alliance had grown into a small army of truth-seekers. Tomorrow's town meeting would determine whether justice prevailed or corruption continued its stranglehold on Clearwater Springs. The abandoned silver mine sat like a wound in the desert hillside. Nietzsche used tracking skills learned during his childhood displacement to approach undetected. His family had been forced to hide from soldiers and bounty hunters. Those hard lessons now served a different purpose. Addie followed silently, her small size allowing her to move through brush without disturbing branches. Together, they reached the mine entrance where two of Malloy's men stood guard. From their hiding spot, they heard voices echoing from deep within the tunnels. A woman's voice, strong and defiant despite obvious exhaustion. Sarah Gardner was alive. "I won't sign anything until I know my daughter is safe." Sarah's voice carried clearly in the desert air. Malloy's response revealed the truth that changed everything. "Your daughter is exactly where you wanted her, Sarah. Don't pretend this wasn't all part of your plan." Nietzsche felt Addie stiffen beside him. The child's breathing quickened as the implications became clear. "You're not a seamstress at all," Malloy continued inside the mine. "You're some kind of legal investigator. Been traveling territory to territory building cases against men like me." Sarah's laugh held no humor. "Men like you always reveal themselves eventually. Greed makes you careless. Careless enough to let you document everything while playing dress-up as a helpless seamstress." Professional legal advocate who had been working undercover. "The territorial authorities know exactly where I am," Sarah continued. "If I don't report in by tomorrow's deadline, they'll send marshals. Then you better hope your signatures look convincing on these property transfers." The conversation revealed Malloy's desperation. He needed Sarah alive to forge documents that would legitimize his stolen land. Her legal expertise made her both valuable and dangerous. Nietzsche felt his initial anger at being manipulated fade into respect. Sarah's strategy had been brilliant. She had used both herself and her daughter as pieces in a larger game of justice. She played them perfectly, he admitted to Addie. "Mama always said chess was about thinking 10 moves ahead." They retreated from the mine to process this revelation. Sarah's apparent neglect had actually been the ultimate expression of trust in her daughter's abilities. "You weren't abandoned," Nietzsche said. "You were deployed." Addie's newfound understanding transformed her entire posture. She stood taller, moved with more confidence. The frightened child had become a purposeful agent. Back in town, they shared the revelation with Tatanka and Miss Clara. Both adults struggled to comprehend the complexity of Sarah's undercover operation. "So the seamstress story was completely false?" Miss Clara asked. "A perfect disguise," Nietzsche replied. "Who suspects a seamstress of building legal cases?" Tatanka shook his head in amazement. "She fooled everyone, including me, and I pride myself on reading people." The revelation explained many previously confusing details. Sarah's late-night writing sessions had been legal documentation. Her questions about property ownership had been professional investigation. Her confidence when confronting Malloy had come from legal authority. "The territorial government sent her here specifically to investigate land fraud," Addie said with growing pride. "Which means tomorrow's town meeting isn't just about exposing Malloy," Miss Clara realized. "It's about She turned me into myself, but with purpose." They began planning the next phase with new understanding. Tomorrow's town meeting would serve multiple functions: rescue Sarah, expose Malloy's network, and present evidence to territorial authorities who were likely already en route. "Federal marshals will want detailed testimony," Miss Clara noted. "They'll get it," Addie said confidently. "I remember everything." As sunset painted the desert sky orange and purple, their small group prepared for the final confrontation. Sarah Gardner's elaborate strategy was nearing its climax. The abandoned child had become the key witness. The displaced Apache had become the bridge between justice and truth. The frightened cowboy had become the inside source. The timid teacher had become the documenting ally. Tomorrow would determine whether Sarah's calculated risk would achieve the justice she had spent months planning. Dawn broke over the desert as Naichi led the rescue mission to the silver mine. His childhood had taught him patience during his family's forced relocations. Those lessons in stealth and timing now served to free another family torn apart by injustice. Tatanka approached the guards with a fabricated message from Malloy. His years of loyal service had earned him trust that he now used to create a diversion. The guards followed him toward town, leaving the mine entrance unprotected. Addie guided them through the tunnels, using her perfect memory of the sounds she had heard echoing from within. Her small size allowed her to squeeze through narrow passages that would challenge grown men. They found Sarah Gardner, chained in a makeshift cell deep within the mine. Weeks of captivity had left her thin and exhausted, but her eyes still blazed with determination. When she saw Addie, tears mixed with fierce maternal pride. "My brilliant girl, you did exactly what I hoped you would do." Sarah's embrace conveyed both apology and gratitude. She had gambled everything on her daughter's unique abilities, and won more than she had dared expect. "Mama, I know." Throughout the Western Territories, Clearwater Springs represents a pattern we've seen in dozens of communities, Sarah explained. Corrupt local officials working with wealthy landowners to steal property from vulnerable families. Miss Clara produced her school records showing the timeline of disappearing families. The documentation perfectly supported Sarah's official investigation. 12 families displaced in 6 months, Miss Clara reported, all following the same pattern of intimidation and forced departure. Tatanka's journal provided crucial inside details about Malloy's methods. His careful record-keeping had documented the corruption from within the organization. "I kept notes because my father taught me that lies eventually contradict themselves," Tatanka said. "Truth stays consistent." Sarah examined Tatanka's journal with professional appreciation. His detailed observations would serve as powerful testimony in federal court. "Your documentation is exactly what we need to pursue criminal charges," she told him. Addie organized her memories into systematic testimony, transforming random observations into coherent legal evidence. Her mother guided this process, teaching her how to present facts in ways that would hold up under official scrutiny. "Remember dates, times, exact words," Sarah instructed. "Federal marshals need precision." "I remember everything, Mama." Everything. The town meeting was scheduled for sunset. Word had spread quickly about the federal investigation, causing panic among Malloy's supporters and hope among his victims' allies. Other townspeople began approaching their group with additional testimony. The baker reported being pressured to refuse service to families Malloy wanted gone. The doctor described being asked to falsify medical records to support Malloy's claims. "People were afraid to speak up before," Miss Clara observed, "but now they see a real chance for justice." Sheriff Morrison made a desperate attempt to arrest the group on fabricated charges, but the arrival of 2 federal marshals ended his authority over the situation. Transfers. Those families can reclaim their rightful land. The scope of justice extended far beyond Clearwater Springs. Sarah's investigation would provide evidence for similar cases across multiple territories. As evening approached, townspeople gathered in the meeting hall with unprecedented attendance. Word of the federal investigation had drawn families from neighboring communities who had suffered similar injustices. Naichi reflected on how this small partnership had grown into something much larger. His decision to help one abandoned child had contributed to exposing a network of territorial corruption. "Your grandmother would be proud," Sarah told him. "This kind of justice serves all displaced peoples." The meeting hall filled with tension and anticipation. Victims and perpetrators would finally face each other in an arena where truth mattered more than power or intimidation. Federal marshals positioned themselves strategically around the room. Their presence transformed the usual town meeting into an official legal proceeding with real consequences. Sarah Gardner's months of careful planning were about to reach their climax through the testimony of an 8-year-old girl whose perfect memory would reshape the future of Clearwater Springs. The town hall overflowed with residents who had never before attended a community meeting. Federal Marshal Thompson called the session to order, while Marshal Williams positioned himself near the exit to prevent anyone from fleeing. Sarah Gardner stood before the assembly with the confidence of legal authority, rather than the humble demeanor of a seamstress. Her true identity had been revealed, transforming her from victim to prosecutor. Citizens of Clearwater Springs, I am Sarah Gardner, Territorial Legal Advocate. For the past 3 months, I have been investigating systematic land fraud in this community. Whiskey Malloy sat rigid in the front row, his expensive suit unable to mask the desperation in his eyes. Sheriff Morrison had already been placed in federal custody, his badge and weapons confiscated. My daughter Addie will present testimony about activities she witnessed during my investigation. Addie took the conversations, documented threats, and witnessed property transfers. October 2nd at 8:15 in the morning, Mr. Malloy burned the Henderson family's original land deed behind his saloon. He told Tatanka it was just old paperwork, but I saw Mrs. Henderson's name on it. Tatanka stood and confirmed Addie's testimony. His journal provided written evidence that corroborated her perfect recall. Other townspeople began adding their own witness accounts. Miss Clara presented school enrollment records, showing the pattern of sudden departures. 12 families in 6 months, always following confrontations with Malloy over property disputes. These children left toys and books behind, she testified. Families don't abandon their children's belongings when moving voluntarily. The baker, the doctor, and other business owners described being pressured to refuse service to targeted families. Malloy's network of intimidation extended throughout the community's economic structure. Sarah presented the hidden documents from the church. Property deeds, survey maps, and legal records proved that many of Malloy's current holdings had been fraudulently obtained. These families held legitimate legal title to their land, Sarah explained. Mr. Malloy used falsified gambling debts and fabricated tax claims to force illegal transfers. Marshal Thompson examined the evidence with professional thoroughness. Federal jurisdiction gave him authority to reverse fraudulent property transfers and pursue criminal charges. Mr. Malloy, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, theft of property, and violation of federal land protection statutes. Malloy's arrest triggered confessions from several accomplices who hoped to negotiate lighter sentences. The full scope of the corruption network began emerging through their testimony. Dr. Peterson admitted to falsifying medical records to support Malloy's claims about families being unfit for property ownership. Bank clerk Williams confessed to manipulating loan documents and creating false debt records. The entire operation depended on people being too afraid from helping one abandoned child to achieving justice for dozens of families. His people had suffered similar displacement, making this victory personally meaningful. Your mother's strategy worked perfectly, he told Addie. She turned you into the most important witness in the territory. Federal prosecutors announced they would use the Clearwater Springs case as a model for investigating similar fraud in other communities. Sarah's undercover work had provided a blueprint for exposing systematic corruption. Tatanka was offered a position as federal witness coordinator, helping other communities document land fraud cases. His attention to detail and moral courage made him valuable to the territorial justice system. My father would be proud, he said. Truth really did triumph over lies. Miss Clara became the official record keeper for property restorations, ensuring that returning families received proper documentation of their legal rights. "Education serves justice," she declared. "These children will grow up knowing that truth has power." As the formal proceedings concluded, Addie and Sarah prepared for their next assignment. Other territories required investigation. Other communities needed advocates. "Will we help more families like the Martinez family?" Addie asked. "As many as we can reach," Sarah replied. Addie pulled out a new leather journal, a gift from Nietzsche. She began writing detailed notes about their Clearwater Springs investigation, consciously documenting their methods for future cases. Her transformation from abandoned child to purposeful advocate was complete. The frightened girl who had approached an Apache scout 4 days earlier had become a partner in seeking territorial justice. Clearwater Springs began rebuilding on foundations of honesty rather than corruption. Property records were corrected, legitimate ownership was restored, and fair dealing replaced intimidation. The town that had dismissed one small girl's questions learned that truth, once awakened, reshapes everything it touches.